Today we're going to go through the steps on replacing the fuel pump in this 2001 Pontiac Bonneville. One of the first things you'll have to do is access the battery from underneath the rear seat. Before we begin the repair, we will bleed the fuel pressure through the fuel pressure gauge. In order to gain access to the fuel pressure port, we will have to remove the engine cover, making sure to capture any fuel that you will bleed out of the system. We always recommend removing the fuel tank so it can be properly cleaned. On this application, fuel tank removal takes an extended amount of time. The manufacturer recommends removing the fuel pump through an access plate in the trunk. Always be mindful of safety, and when we're working in an enclosed area such as this with fuel vapors, we need to make sure that it's well ventilated and we have a proper fire extinguisher available. Now we will disconnect the electrical connections. Note the safety retainer on the fuel pump connection. We will remove it, then we can disconnect the connector. We will also disconnect the fuel pressure sensor connector, and now we can disconnect the fuel lines. These are a pinch type retainer. Noting that there may be some residual pressure yet in the system. That's the reason why we want to rag underneath the fuel line fitting to be able to catch that. Now we will need to clean the top of the tank. We will need to use a non-ferrous wire brush and wipe the debris free from the top of the tank. We recommend not using compressed air in this environment, as compressed air can build up a static charge. Now that we've cleaned the top of the tank, we'll remove the tank locking ring. We'll use a non-ferrous punch, turning the locking ring counterclockwise. Always be mindful that you have a reservoir at the bottom of the fuel pump module that will contain fuel. You'll have to be very careful in removing this, as we want to capture this fuel and not spill it into the trunk area. Now we will remove the fuel line retainer clips. These will be reused on the new module assembly. Always inspect your tank lock ring, making sure that it is safe for reuse. When removing the fuel pump module, inspect the strainer. If you note a large amount of contamination, it would be advisable at this point to remove the tank for cleaning. Now we will remove the new Airtex fuel pump module from the packaging. In the installation kit, you will find a GM wiring connector that may be used on some applications, an assortment of tank seals. Be sure to pick the correct tank seal for your application. Now we will untape the float arm from the side of the module. Also, on the end of the float arm, you'll notice that there's a red protector cap. We need to remove it. Now we will install the float arm into the sender assembly. This will slide into the center bushing, and it will snap into the arm. Once it's snapped into location, we're ready to install the unit. Before we place the fuel pump module into the tank, we need to put the locking ring on the top of the module assembly. This will ease in installation. Now we will install the fuel line retainers into the ends of the fuel line fittings, making sure that the fuel line fittings are not damaged in any way. We will install the tank seal into the top of the tank. There is a locating indentation on the top of the tank. On the bottom of the flange is a locating tab where this will set. Now we will push the fuel pump module into location, and we will start the locking ring in place. Using a non-ferrous brass punch, we will turn the locking ring clockwise to lock it into position. Now we will reattach the fuel lines. Now we can make the electrical connections. First we will connect the fuel tank pressure sensor, and now we will connect the fuel pump module assembly, making sure to reinstall the safety retainer. Now we can bolt the access cover back in place, reposition the carpet in the trunk, reattach the negative battery cable. We will reinstall the back seat cushion. Cycle the key 2 to 3 times to prime the system, and we will start the vehicle. Monitor the fuel pressure, making sure it's within vehicle specification. Now shut the vehicle off. We will bleed the pressure from the fuel system through our gauge, making sure to contain any fuel that we bleed out of the system. Now we can safely remove our fuel pressure gauge from the test port, reinstall the test port cap, reinstall the engine cover.